So now we're going to do a quick review of the research on effective comprehension instruction. And we've known for many years what kinds of strategies are most effective to teach kids in order to help them learn how to comprehend. I'm going to go through right now and identify and say a couple words about a set of these strategies that were first identified in the National Reading Panel back in 2001. But a lot of research then has supported that these strategies that I'm going to identify for you are the best ones. So if you're going to pick a handful of strategies to use with kids, these are the ones you want to start with. So the first was described as comprehension monitoring. So that's any sort of strategy that you can teach kids that's going to help keep them focused while they're reading, that's going to have them stop and reflect on what they're reading. Sometimes by asking themselves questions. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it. Now, in the key comprehension routine, the strategies that we teach that are most related to this are main idea skills and also two-column notes. Because when you teach kids to identify main ideas, especially paragraph main ideas, as they're reading along, they stop after every bit of text, usually after each paragraph or one or two paragraphs, and stop and reflect, and they have to ask themselves, what's the main idea? If it's stated somewhere, they can identify it, use that language, but oftentimes main ideas are not, they're implied and students have to infer them. So at that point they have to stop and not necessarily identify the main idea, but generate it in their own terms. We also use two-column note-taking and encourage students whenever they're reading to take notes using that. Because again, as you're reading, you stop, you put your main ideas on the left side of your notes, you identify a couple of key important details, you put some of those words or phrases over on the right side, and it forces you to be active. So that's one of the strategies, comprehension monitoring. The second is the use of graphic organizers. And we've all seen hundreds of graphic organizers. I think one of the problems is that there are so many to choose from that they're really overwhelming. If you were to do an internet search of graphic organizers, you'd come up with, again, hundreds of them. But they're visual representations, which is why they help so much. Now, as I mentioned, there are a lot of graphic organizers. What you want to try to do, if you're using this strategy with kids, is pick just a handful. The problem we have is as kids are now going from class to class, subject to subject, grade to grade, teacher to teacher, they just keep getting bombarded with all different kinds of graphic organizers. And the ones who need them the most, which are struggling students, they never get to use one long enough to be able to internalize it and get to independent use. Now, there are certain graphic organizers that are used for very specific tasks. So for example, if I show you the overlapping then, that's the kind of classic graphic organizer for compare and contrast, right? And so those kinds of graphic organizers are helpful. But in the key comprehension routine, you're going to see that we've chosen one sort of default or foundational graphic organizer, and it's what we call the top-down topic web. And it's something that starts with your biggest topic here, and as you go further down the page, you get sub-topics and then sub-subtopics. You'll learn more about that later. But the reason we use this as this sort of default, it's the graphic organizer at the heart of the routine, is because it's really flexible. You can use it with just about anything. You can use it with information from reading, both narrative and informational. You can use a topic web to organize a meeting. You can use a topic web to organize stuff. Graphic organizers, definitely an effective strategy, and again, the one that we use in the routine is the top-down web. The third component, research-based component, and this is one of those strategies that both as it relates to comprehension and writing skills turns out to be one of the most effective strategies, and that is teaching kids summarizing skills. And part of that is teaching them the main ideas you need in order to create a summary. Now, the difficulty with this is it's a hard thing to teach, teaching somebody how to summarize, and it's a hard thing to do, but it is so worth it. And it's why it's one of the major activities in the key comprehension routine. The fourth area of component of strategy instruction that is really helpful is teaching kids question generation and answering. So not just posing questions to kids and having them answer them, but eventually getting the students to create their own questions. And in order to do that, what we need to teach students about question generation is that there, first of all, is a continuum of thinking. That we can ask questions that elicit very basic, simple, remembering kinds of answers, all the way up to really complex synthesis and evaluation kinds of answers. In the key comprehension routine, we use question generation, and what we use for it to teach that continuum is Bloom's taxonomy, something that I'm sure many of you are familiar with from your college days. Actually, we're relying on the Bloom's taxonomy that was revised in 2001. But basically, Bloom's moves up a ladder beginning with remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and eventually creating. And so teaching kids that there is a continuum of thinking, and then teaching them key words and phrases and question prompts that can be used to create a question that gets you thinking at all those levels. That's how we do it in the key comp routine. And the last one that was identified in the research as a very effective strategy, and that is any strategy you can use that will have kids activate their prior knowledge or make sort of predictions. This is what we would call a before strategy. So before you're about to read or before you're about to participate in a class lesson, what are some strategies we can do that are going to get you tied in more? And the way we do that in the key comp routine is we use the top-down topic web. We pass it out to students before they're about to read or engage in a lesson, and it gives them the big picture of what they're going to learn. So they see the topics and the subtopics, and we use it as a tool to activate their prior knowledge. So we might ask them questions like, look over the items on the topic web. Is there anything you see that you recognize that you can make a connection to? We'll also say, can you make a prediction about something you think you're going to learn? Or can you pose a question about something that's on your mind? So those are what are often referred to as the 5 areas of effective strategy instruction. Now, another finding, which isn't so much a strategy, but it's the way you teach kids and you have them practice, is cooperative learning. So another major finding is that when students are learning comprehension strategies, that if they have an opportunity to practice them in small cooperative groups with their peers, they learn them faster and they learn them deeper. So we also want to add cooperative practice in there. And then finally, the last 2 points I want to make about research as it regards effective comprehension instruction, and that is that when it comes to comprehension, especially beyond grades 2 and 3, that it's the content teachers who are often in the best position to teach kids these strategies. They do it embedded in whatever it is they're teaching. So rather than have a reading specialist off in a special pull-out study skills class trying to teach these things, if you have your science teachers and your math teachers and your English teachers and social studies teachers, if you have them embedding, teaching kids how to apply these strategies to whatever they're learning in the classroom or whatever they're reading in math or history or science, that's the best way to teach them. And then the final finding is that while any one of these strategies is helpful and useful, if we can teach kids to combine more than one strategy, I like to use the term bundle our strategies, so that now you have a collection of strategies in your pocket, and when you're independently reading, which is our ultimate goal, having them use these independently, that you have a collection of these strategies that, depending on what you're trying to do, you might use one or two or three of them at the same time. So that's probably the fastest review you'll ever get from the research about effective comprehension strategy instruction.